All right, so in this video, we're going to start looking at the eye. We'll have two videos looking at the eye and vision. All right, so basically the way the eye works is there's a bunch of photoreceptors in the back of your eye. Approximately 70% of your body's sensory receptors are in the eye. That's a lot. All right, half of your cerebral cortex is devoted to visual processing. And so our eyes are the way that we see, interpret, and deal with the world. And so very important, our brains are aware of that. And so they have dedicated a lot of space to it. And it's incredible if you think about the small space of our body that's dedicated to vision. Even only like 1/6 of the eye is visible. If you look at this person, the rest of their eye is like hidden in their skull. Only just a small portion of the eye is visible, but so much of our sensory input comes from that. All right, so let's look at some of the accessories of the eye. There's the eyebrows, which you can see here on this person. Not so much, but you see them. They serve purposes. They shade the eye from sunlight a little bit. They prevent perspiration from reaching the eye. That's very important. And so they do have a protective function. The eyelids, obviously a very protective function. Eyelids blink reflexively every 3 to 7 seconds. So if you want to time your blinks, actually, if you don't really think about blinking until you start to think about blinking, then it's hard not to think about blinking. Eyelids offer protection from foreign objects going into the eye. They keep the eye moist. You have the eyelashes there, and the eyelashes are actually, each one is innervated, meaning that there's a nerve connected to each one, and these nerves initiate the blink response. And so this is why sometimes you can close your eye before you realize that there's something coming at your eye, because that initiation is so fast to protect your eye. Let's see. There is this white area here. You can kind of see this. This is like a membrane, a transparent mucous membrane that sits on the eye. It's called the conjunctiva, and it just lubricates the eye, protects the eye. If you've ever had pink eye or conjunctivitis, this is an infection or an inflammation of this conjunctiva. Very, very painful. All right, so let's look at a little bit more of the structure of the actual eyeball. There's 3 layers to the structure of the eyeball. You have the fibrous layer. Well, the internal structure of the eye is filled with fluid. I don't see where it is, but it'll be okay. Filled with a fluid. That these fluids are called humors, like the word humerus. They're in like a vitreous humor. There it is right there. Vitreous humor. There it is. All right. Filled with a vitreous humor. And that's just fluid that protects the inside of the eye, gives it nutrients and so forth. Then there's a fibrous layer of the eye. And this is the outermost layer. And the fibrous layer is this dense connective tissue that's along the outside of the eye. You can kind of see that there. And this fibrous layer is divided into 2 regions, the sclera and the cornea. And so you can see the sclera here. This is like what we think of as the white of the eye, right? And then the cornea is the front part of that, and it is transparent, obviously, so that light can get through there. This makes it kind of like a window to the eye. The sclera actually goes back into the brain, and so it becomes like the white matter of the optic nerve and then the brain. All right, then you have the vascular layer right underneath that, and the vascular layer you can see is this red business here, and you can see the veins in there. And it has three regions associated with it. There is the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris. The choroid, this is, you can see that here, it supplies the eye with blood vessels. It actually has a brown pigment associated with it as well, and this prevents the scattering of light. It kind of keeps the light focused a little bit, not so much like the retina or the lens or anything like that, so don't think that, but it just keeps light from bouncing all over the place inside the eyeball. There's the ciliary body, and you can see that here. The ciliary body is these smooth muscles. They control the shape of the lens, and they hold the lens in position. And so they're the ones that are doing the lens. And then there's the iris. And the iris is the colored portion of the eye, and it lies between the cornea and the lens. You can see that there. And it controls the opening called the pupil. Where'd it go? There's the pupil. There's the pupil. All right. So the pupil is a central opening that regulates the amount of light that is entering in the eye. At close vision, or when it's really bright light, this will contract and cause the pupil to get smaller. This is parasympathetic control, if you remember those two things. And at distant vision, and when there's dim light, it will actually cause the pupils to dilate. And this is sympathetic control. And a lot of times the pupils can dilate even not because of vision. So, like if you are, let's say you're solving a problem or something that you're listening to is particularly appealing to you, your pupils will actually dilate in response to that. So it's almost like it changes in emotional state. Your pupils can also dilate. So that's an interesting fact. And then next is this inner layer, which we kind of looked at this one already, but you can see the inner layer here. This inner layer is known as the retina. All right. And the retina here is represented by this yellow business. And it basically is kind of an, if you can think of it as like an outpocketing of the brain inside the eyeball, contains millions of cells called photoreceptors. And the photoreceptors' job is, guess what? To receive light and transduce that light energy into nerve energy so the brain can understand it. And it has a two-layered membrane, which I don't think, let's see, I think we can see it here. Yep. There is the neural layer and the pigmented layer. The neural or the pigmented layer is what is absorbing all of the light energy. And the neural layer is what has the actual photoreceptors on it. So the neural layer is like keeping the light from scattering. The pigmented layer keeps the light from scattering. The neural layer actually contains these photoreceptors, and these photoreceptors are sending that information to the brain. The retina, like I said, has, I think it's around 250 million photoreceptors, and they are one of two types. You've heard of these before. There are rods and cones. You can see that up here. They're shaped. This has got a little cone shape, and the rod has a rod shape. The rods are for dim light and peripheral vision. They do not detect color, and they're more sensitive. They don't need the brightness as much. So don't think sharp images. This is like they can see dim light really well. The cones require bright light, but they also have this high color resolution that our eyes can perceive as well. And here we go. One last thing to talk about here is this area in the back of the eye called the macula, or the macula lutea. And it is right above this area called the optic disc. In the optic disc, interestingly enough, there are no photoreceptors, and you can't see. It's a blind spot in the eye. And whereas the macula is where the most cones are located. So this is a place of very sharp vision. And then in the center of the macula is something called the fovea centralis, which is, makes sense that it's this tiny pit at the center of the macula, contains all cones. This is where you're getting the best visual acuity, is right here in the center of this fovea centralis. So if you go to the eye doctor and they take a picture of your eye, they are looking at your macula to make sure that the macula is in good shape, because there's a disease called macular degeneration, which can lead to blindness or lead to you having a big dot in the middle of your eye, which is not a good thing. And so they will look at the health of the eye. And this is one of the only places in the body actually that you can see live blood vessels. And so a lot of times what an eye doctor will do is they will look at your blood vessels in the eye, and they can tell if you have high blood pressure damage by looking at the shape of these blood vessels. And so there's a lot that can be told just by looking into the eye and seeing the health of all these tissues.